At 6:47 on the morning of December 23, 1944, the sunrise over the Ardennes wasn't greeted with coffee, but with gun sights. Through the optics of a Sherman M4A3E8, EZ-8, the gunners of the U.S. 37th Tank Battalion weren't looking at the landscape with fear. They were calculating firing solutions. Down in the valley, a column of German heavy armor, the feared 2nd Company of the 506th Heavy Panzer Battalion, was moving into the kill zone. The German commander, Hauptmann Klaus Richter, scanned the horizon, likely expecting the usual Allied retreat. Instead, what he saw made his blood run cold. Columns of black smoke were already rising. But this wasn't American equipment burning. It was the wreckage of German panzers. Richter was a veteran, a man with 47 kills on the Eastern Front. But the 31-year-old captain was about to learn a harsh lesson. The rules of armored warfare had changed. Facing him were 50 American tanks under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams. They were methodically dismantling his division. If you want to understand how American combined arms and industrial might shattered the myth of the invincible German Tiger, hit that like button. It helps us bring you more history from the winning side. But to understand the carnage Richter was witnessing, we need to rewind 72 hours. Scene: map graphic of the Battle of the Bulge. December 20th, 1944. Narrator: December 20th, 1944. The Battle of the Bulge is raging. Hitler has thrown his final, desperate gamble onto the table. 400,000 men and over 1,000 tanks surging through the Belgian forests. The Nazi propaganda machine promised this offensive would break the Allied lines and restore panzer dominance to the level of 1940. But the American response was already in motion. The German heavy battalions were elite, no doubt. Their Tiger IIs weighed in at a crushing 57 tons, fighting weight, mounting the legendary 88mm gun. On paper, they could knock out any Allied vehicle from 2,000 meters. Their 100mm frontal armor was a fortress on tracks. However, the Germans had a fatal flaw that American intelligence was keen to exploit. These steel monsters were thirsty. A Tiger consumed 540 liters of fuel for every 100 kilometers on rough terrain. In the snow of the Ardennes, that consumption doubled. While the Germans had heavy armor, the U.S. Army had something better: logistics. American air power was relentlessly hammering German supply convoys, starving the beasts before they could even fight. Scene: tactical map overlay. U.S. Command Tent. Narrator: by December 21st, Richter's company was down from 14 operational Tigers to just 9. They hadn't lost them to combat, they lost them to empty gas tanks. But the real nightmare for the Germans wasn't logistical, it was tactical. Since the hard lessons of Normandy, American tank crews had adapted. The GIs knew that a lone Sherman couldn't penetrate a Tiger's frontal plate. The Germans mocked the Sherman, calling it a Ronson because they claimed it lit up on the first hit. But under the leadership of Colonel Creighton Abrams, the 37th Tank Battalion turned that arrogance against them. Abrams developed a specific, brutal doctrine: the swarm. It wasn't about chivalry, it was about efficiency. The rule was simple: never engage a Tiger one-on-one. Always attack in a pack of at least 5. 2 Shermans engaged from the front, firing high-explosive rounds just to blind the sensors and fix the German commander's attention. Meanwhile, 3 Shermans sprint to the flanks. The Tiger's side armor was only 80 millimeters thick. Vulnerable. And the Shermans waiting for Richter that morning weren't the undergunned models of D-Day. These were the new M4A3/8s, mounting high-velocity 76mm guns loaded with HVAP ammunition. At 500 meters, that gun could punch through 157mm of steel. The prey had become the hunter. Scene: the engagement. 6:52 a.m., December 23rd. Explosions and gunfire. Narrator: back to the morning of December 23rd. At 5:30, U.S. forward scouts identified Richter's column pushing toward the Manhay crossroads. Colonel Abrams received the intel at 5:47. By 6:15, 50 American tanks were hull down in ambush positions. What followed wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration of American tactical superiority. The first Tiger was terminated at 6:52. Inside that German tank, gunner Hans Muller spotted movement at 2 o'clock. He tried to traverse the turret. It took him 19 sluggish seconds to rotate the hydraulic mechanism. In those same 19 seconds, 3 American crews had already completed their flanking maneuver. 3 76mm rounds slammed into the Tiger's side hull almost simultaneously. The catastrophic explosion killed the German crew in less than a second. Scene: chaos in the German lines. Narrator: the second Tiger attempted to retreat. Its commander, Oberleutnant Braun, screamed for reverse speed. But a Tiger II crawls backward at just 12 kilometers per hour. An American Sherman? It can do 38 kilometers per hour in reverse. Braun never stood a chance. For Sherman swarmed him, closing the net. The kill shot came from the rear, punching through the engine deck armor, only 80 millimeters thick, and igniting the fuel tanks. Braun was the sole survivor, pulling himself out of a burning steel coffin. Richter watched this unfold from 800 meters away. Years later, in his memoirs, he admitted the terrifying reality of fighting the U.S. Army. It was like seeing wolves being hunted by a coordinated pack of dogs. No matter how powerful we were individually, they outflanked us, outthought us, and outmaneuvered us. Scene: the aftermath.
7:30 a.m.
Narrator: by 7:30 a.m., Richter's company had lost 6 Tigers. The Americans had lost 11 Shermans. To the German mind, this looked like a favorable exchange ratio. But they didn't understand the math of American industrial warfare. Those 11 burning Shermans represented vehicles that would be replaced within 72 hours. At that very moment, Liberty ships were offloading 50 brand-new tanks every single day in French ports. Meanwhile, the 6 Tigers Germany lost represented 6 months of production that could never be recovered. The Henschel factory in Kassel was supposed to build 25 Tigers a month, but under the relentless bombing of the Allied air forces, they were barely scraping together 15. Scene: the retreat.
8:15 a.m.
Narrator: at 8:15, Richter faced the inevitable. He ordered the retreat. It wasn't cowardice. It was the cold reality of fuel gauges reading 0. His 3 surviving Tigers had fuel for maybe 40 kilometers. The German lines were 35 kilometers away.
But the U.S.
Army Air Force had one last surprise. Earlier that morning, P-47 Thunderbolts had obliterated the German fuel depot at Stavelot. There was no gas waiting for them. The retreat turned into a death march. At 9:22, the 3rd Tiger in the column sputtered and died.
Dry.
The crew was forced to spike their own gun with explosives and flee on foot. At 10:47, the next Tiger suffered the same fate. Richter's own tank limped back to German lines with exactly 3 liters of fuel left in the sump. He hadn't just been beaten by tanks, he had been beaten by the blockade. Scene: strategic overview. General Walter Models HQ. Narrator: in 3 hours and 41 minutes, the 37th Tank Battalion had destroyed or captured 11 Tigers and 23 support vehicles, trading 14 Shermans and 2 half-tracks to do it. But the tactical victory was secondary to the strategic lesson. That afternoon, the German Supreme Commander, Field Marshal Walter Model, a man known for his brutal pragmatism, read Richter's report. His conclusion, recorded in the war diaries, marked the psychological end of the Wehrmacht. We have lost the capacity to wage a war of maneuver. The Americans have more of everything. More tanks, more fuel, more ammo, more spare parts, more men. We can win individual firefights, but we cannot win a war of attrition against a nation that produces more military hardware in a month than we produce in a year. Model was right. Hitler ordered the offensive to continue, but the Battle of the Bulge simply ground the German army into dust, costing them 100,000 men and 800 tanks they couldn't replace. Scene: closing montage. U.S. tanks moving forward. Factories in Detroit. Narrator: Klaus Richter survived the Ardennes, but not the war. On April 12, 1945, he was captured near Magdeburg when his replacement Tiger ran out of fuel for the third time in 4 months. In a 1967 interview, Richter reflected on that freezing December morning. His words perfectly encapsulate the American way of war. The Americans weren't better soldiers in the old Prussian sense. But they had something we couldn't match. They had unlimited production and perfect logistics. They could lose 10 tanks and receive 20 the next day. We lost a Tiger and wept as if we had lost a child. December 23, 1944, wasn't the day Germany lost the war. That fate was sealed the moment American industry entered the fight. What Richter witnessed was the final proof that superior engineering cannot defeat superior logistics, tactics, and mass production. 50 Shermans against 14 Tigers. A German division wiped out not just by a 76mm shell, but by the relentless output of Detroit and the tactical discipline of the U.S. Army. What do you think? Is logistics the ultimate weapon of war? Let us know in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe and ring that bell. We drop new verified stories of military history every week.